So we just previously looked at kind of the linear links, like big, like linear chains, whether it's through a corridor, through a hallway, and kind of some strategies to go about ensuring you're not compounding error. So now we're going to kind of get into more of a typical situation. So let's just go reactivate this other version. So more commonly, and what's kind of a better practice for linking and tying setups together, is you want to try to link one setup into whatever adjacent setups have the best overlap and a good fit. So in this case, because all of these setups, this whole area is kind of, right, it's kind of in an open environment, just a few columns between everything. So when I'm linking these, it's pretty good chances that I'm going to have like just a nice solid link between whatever setups I choose. So in this case, basically I just have one setup that's tied into three adjacent setups. The ones in the middle, I mean, there's a little better overlap, right? So I have this one setup, I've got 5 individual links. So this is just kind of a better practice in terms of ensuring you're not compounding error, and then you just continue to have a nice tight registration. So right before, linear, just long straight lines of links, and here, because everything's kind of in the same area, you can kind of see how you can kind of tie it into adjacent setups. And so as always, if you kind of need some help to when you get started of understanding what's a good link or not, you can always come in here, right click on your bundle and go show suggested links. So in my case, because I've already pretty much created all those, if I were to reactivate that other version, if I hit the right button, I believe once we go in and I hit show, go back to my sitemap, I'll go show suggested. Right, you can see what the software thinks is going to be a good link, and then to go and create those. So just a quick little example of what you can do to kind of help get started and understand kind of what is a good setup and a good link, right? So you can just select on one and you can do just the visual alignment for that one, or you can go add all suggested links. So once you do that, the software is going to basically do a best fit visual alignment between everything, and at which point you can go through and verify visually verify the registration, make sure you don't have any double ups of lines, and if you're happy, you can lock everything, or you can run cloud to cloud on everything once more and then lock and or optimize and then lock your links. So just a couple options you have for more of a kind of typical scenario. So next I'm just going to kind of go into a few other scenarios that I run into, much bigger data sets, and kind of what that looks like. So from that, I'm going to go into this level 26 south. So this data set was a final as-built of a PT deck the night before placing. So what you're seeing is basically just a PT deck, lots of reinforcing, PT cable sleeves, all that fun stuff. So for this data set, and kind of what I found to work really good for kind of a typical deck placement where everything is in the open, you just have some core walls, some climbing forms, some columns to kind of act as your vertical surfaces to help lock in. Pull that away. What I found that works best is I went through and kind of had these centrally located setups. So right, you kind of see from that middle point, you'll see it kind of branching out and spider webbing out into the adjacent setup. So each of these I did with a medium density scan. So right, it says 14.7 million, go to the next one over, 3.5 million. So the medium density scans, a little more data was collected. I also left the high tilt accuracy mode enabled for each of these kind of centrally located control scans, as I call them. So high tilt accuracy mode enabled. From there, in the Field 360 app, I basically just linked these together, and then just like you see with the lower density scans, I kind of branched them out off of the medium density scan. I could go through and kind of link each setup into the adjacent ones. It's not going to really hurt anything, and honestly might result in a slightly tighter registration, but it's kind of finding that balance of speed versus return on your gains or your links that you add. I don't think that term is called. Basically, the more links you add, once again, isn't always going to mean better. You just want to make sure you have good links for your data set. So coming off of this medium into these low density scans, very, very little chance of compounding error. So for me, I trust it. I've continually gotten great results checking my true slicer. So that's kind of another little tactic, a strategy that I use is medium density scans kind of spread out every 20, 25 feet on the deck. And then I fill in with low density scans to kind of get lots of good photos and just to kind of fill out that coverage of the data set. And then so I'll re-enable my point cloud. And so because I'm going around a core and I'm not able to kind of close the loop as I get around. So with that, you'll kind of notice that I have a few more links that kind of tie in my setups together to kind of close that loop, if you will, as I'm coming around the corner, just to ensure I'm not getting any compounding, any error that's getting extrapolated out, just due to lack of overlap coverage between setups. So that's kind of why you'll see I've got a few more links that tie in around as I get around this corner of the core. So once again, just another technique, another strategy to kind of go about linking. In the past I've done very linear, right, where I kind of got this main chain of links and then from there it branches out. Gotten great results, but I just found that the more links that you can kind of add and tie back into previous or adjacent setups is just the less chance of compounding error throughout the data set. You just want to make sure you're not trying to do setups right from one end to the other where you've got 100 foot between setups, right? Further you are away, the less overlap, the less chance that the points will be good. So just try to keep them a setup or two adjacent, and that's kind of my rule of thumb for as I link and tie stuff together. So that's kind of a typical concrete deck, PT deck that we had. Another fun data set I got into was elevator core scans. So this was quite the extreme end of the scan and kind of the capabilities of what it could do. So go to my bundle cloud. So right now I'm just looking at the setups and the links. So I'll go into this setup, turn my point cloud back on. So what you're looking at is an elevator core, 330 feet from bottom to top. So I was able to stick the scanner out into the edge, kind of getting my overlap, vertical overlap between levels, see the top of the core walls, all that fun stuff. And so when I was linking this and doing this on the Field 360 app, what I did is I basically broke out each level that I scanned. I kept in its own separate bundle within the Field 360 app. And once I imported, I had 27 separate bundles that I then tied together. So each bundle was its own level. So they're all tied together. So basically the setups, right? The 7 or so setups that you see right kind of in the circle, that was one level. So that's its own bundle. And at which point, after I imported into register, I then basically just did level by level, stacked them on top of each other, and you created these kind of vertical links that you see between levels to kind of tie everything in to ensure I'm not getting any compounding error as I go vertically through the elevator core. So nice tight registration in the horizontal where everything's on the same level, and then on each location that I was able to extend and lean the scanner out into the opening, at which point I've got a vertical link kind of tying all the levels together, adding up to create the bundle cloud as a whole. So this one was 178 setups. It was like 5.5 billion points before I cleaned all the data. And you can still see basically my average global errors, my cloud-to-cloud errors, getting an extremely tight registration from bottom to top. Kind of just using that strategy of reducing compounding error by kind of being able to tie in and skipping setups, skipping levels to tie setups together. So just another strategy, another situation. And the last one I kind of had or wanted to talk through was pre-registered data sets and what it's going to do to links. So right now we are looking at our primary control scan. So this was done with a P50 with an RTC data set, basically combining everything together in Cyclone Core. Did not register this in Register 360. This was from basically a third party outside means and method. And so when I imported, basically all I had checked was pre-registered. So what that does is it's going to bring in each of these setups and all of their points associated with each setup, and it's going to leave them in exactly that position. So all of these links, some of them are green, some are red, some are yellow. all of these are basically just auto-generated, auto-populated from register. Like, it's not actually doing anything, it's just simply connecting the dots, so every setup is tied together. So you just got to be aware, or just know, that when it's pre-registered, when you import, when it's pre-registered, nothing changes in this point cloud. Like, the relationship between setups, the point cloud as a whole, nothing changes. So these links, if they're showing up as red, or it may not make sense of, like, why would I link top of this building to top of this building when I can go to something that's closer, just know that it's the software just simply connecting A to B, so everything's one bundle. Because in reality, you're not going to adjust this, you're not going to affect this, right? It's from Cyclone Core. This registration was tight, verified, proven, so you want to leave it and never touch it again. So when you import the pre-registered, that's what it's going to do. So don't be too worried if it's creating weird links or doing something weird. Everything is still exactly as is from when it was last exported to when you now just imported to create a live project in Register 360. So a couple options, couple linking strategies, from linear to kind of closing the loop to kind of creating that cluster spider web. I'm not sure what to really call it, but basically where you've got centrally located setups that branch out into the adjacent nearby. Just a couple strategies that I've used that have been working really well. Once again, everything's going to be unique, everything's going to be different. So these are just a few examples that I like to use when doing my initial registration for a data set.